Welcome to Watchat, where we chat about watches and other facts of life. Today's life lesson is that size does matter. Cue intro. A couple of months ago, I had a conversation with a friend over coffee about whether we men should have them big. With brands releasing bigger size watches, one really wonders whether if that's the new trend, or are watch brands creating opportunity to justify the increase in prices. Regardless of the reason or their agenda, the question remains, should men wear bigger watches? To attempt this question, I approach it with three sub-questions. 1. How small is small or how big is big? 2. What does small or big watches mean? And 3. Why should men wear small or big watches? I then divided my answers into two parts, facts and perception. Like everything in life, we make decisions based on what we know and how we feel, but never when we are hungry. I'm not a watch expert and I don't perceive what I'll say here to be something universal or gospel truth. This is just me trying to have some fun and sharing my views on this subject. If there's an objective here, it is to help you think about these pointers whenever you decide on the size of your next watch. So, here we go. How small is small or how big is big? To determine this, there are three factors to consider. The first is the size of your wrist. If you have a 16cm circumference wrist like mine here, a 38 to 40mm in diameter with a lug to lug of 48 to 50mm is perhaps something that is just right. Anything bigger would be considered big and anything smaller considered small. Here are a few watches that I'll consider them to be on the smaller side. The second factor would be the design of the watch. Some watches may have a bigger real estate, but because of the clever design, it could look smaller than it is. Like my Seiko Sumo Green here, which has a 45mm diameter. However, it looks only a tad bigger than my 40mm Submariner here. The third factor here is your sense of style or fashion. Most professionals who have a more conservative dress code will probably think that a 42mm is too big, whereas entertainers who have a funkier sense of style would probably think that it is too small. Let me recap. We know that a watch is too big or small for us based on the size proportion with our wrists. However, for people like me who has a varying sense of fashion, will at times want to dress like Don Draper and sometimes feel like letting it loose. Hence, what is small or big doesn't just depend on the size of the wrist, but on personal preference as well. It is very subjective, unless you are talking about this watch. What does small or big watches mean? About 5 to 6 years ago, whilst drinking with a couple of friends, one of my friends turned and said he likes my Rolex DateJust 36, aka the American Seiko here, as it has a vintage elegant look. I then complimented him back and say that I like his Rolex GMT Master too, aka the Batman, which is larger and has a more modern look. Another friend of mine jumped into the conversation with a banter by saying that the reason he, the guy with the Batman, has a bigger watch is because he has a small penis. The first friend then turned around and said to my second friend, "Is that why you are wearing a panerai then?" Jokes aside, thinking back, there are some truth in that conversation on how we feel about smaller or bigger watches. No, not the part, but that smaller watches are perceived as elegant and bigger watches are perceived to have a more modern feel. And maybe, for men who has inferiority complex, a larger substantial watch help gives a confident push, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think most, if not all men, have some form of inferiority complex and have different ways of coping with it. If we are being entirely honest here. Again, I'm not referring to you know what, and I digress. Anyway, back in the days when wristwatches were mostly worn by women and men were using pocket watches up until the early 20th century, wristwatches were considered as something too feminine for men, as they were pretty small, slender, and delicate, dangling like a bracelet, whereas pocket watch that men carry were all huge, rugged, and bold, swinging like a flail. So even back in those days, men have already perceived big watches as rugged and manly, while small watches are perceived as fragility, inferiority, and something not worthy of their time. Pun unintended. That's how some feel about them. But what about the facts? Facts-wise, smaller watches usually cost less than bigger watches. I am of course comparing apple to apple here. A 36mm Omega Seamaster Diver 300 will cost less than a 44mm. Naturally, when one wears a bigger watch, it is perceived by others to be something that is more expensive. The second fact here is that smaller watches are lighter. Again, apple to apple. Thirdly, smaller watches are easier to wear under tight cuffs as they are usually thinner. And fourthly, bigger watches are more visible as the brand names tends to be more obvious and their design cues are easier to spot from a distance. To surmise, the size of the watch can mean different things. However, what matters here is which of this meaning matters to you. Which brings us to our last sub-question. Why should men wear small or big watches? There is no easy answer to this. It depends entirely on what you value more. Some people wear watches to tell the time. Some wear them as a fashion accessory or for status symbol. Whatever reason it may be, we wear them because we love them. And that's a fact. I do not think there is only one size that fits everyone, or that anyone should tell you what size or how you should be wearing your watches. It is a personal thing. If you value comfort and convenience, a small, thinner, and lighter watch might be your preference. If you need reading glasses or love how manly the watch decorates your wrists, a bigger and more legible watch might be your choice. If you have a split personality like me, a serious professional on weekdays and a casual bum during the weekends, you can wear both small and big watches at the same time. In conclusion, men should wear whatever they feel happy and comfortable with. Whether it is due to personal gratification of how they want others to perceive them or personal pleasure from owning and seeing something gorgeous on their wrist. It is okay if you have differing views on this so long as we all love watches. So what do you think? If you have other views, please share in the comments below. We would like to hear from you. Anyway, if you like this kind of video, please like, share, comment and subscribe to support me, and I really appreciate it and promise to upload more videos like this. Until the next one, thank you for watching.